We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Glory UGA podcast, brought to you by our great friends at Alumni Hall. And don't look now, guys, but with two more commitments over the weekend, the Georgia Bulldogs have now officially overtaken USC for the #1 class in the entire country in the 2026 class. So we're going to break all of that down on today's episode. But before we get there, don't forget, guys, everything we do here on this channel is designed for all of you diehard Georgia fans by a diehard Georgia fan. So you don't want to miss any of the content we have for you guys. If you fit that description, if you're a diehard fan, go ahead, subscribe right now. Turn those notifications on. Got a ton of content coming your way that you're not going to want to miss. If you enjoyed today's video, please like the video, comment, get that conversation started. Let me know what you think about Georgia's recruiting efforts in this 2026 class. But all right. Let's talk some Georgia football recruiting here today. Now, before we get into the Dogs claiming that #1 spot, at least for right now, in the here and now, let's start with the two big commitments that Georgia landed over the weekend that did put the Dogs over the top in that #1 spot. And I'm going to break down each one of these guys and kind of just dive into what they're going to bring to Georgia in the coming years. I'm going to start with Kaden Prothrow, who at 6'6", 215 to 220-ish pounds, is a 5-star tight end. He's listed as a tight end at least. In fact, he's ranked as the #2 tight end in the entire country. But even though he's listed as a tight end, ostensibly, at the high school level, at Bowdoin High School here in the state of Georgia, he almost exclusively plays receiver. And that's what makes this guy interesting. Is he a wide receiver? Is he a tight end at the next level? Those are questions that at some point we're going to have to answer. But he's the kind of prospect that he's just so talented that you bring him on your roster and you figure the rest out later. When I look at him, I get the question all the time. Like, is this guy a receiver? Is he a tight end? Like, what is your projection for him down the line? Really, he's a unicorn. I think the answer, I know it sounds like a cop-out. I think he can do both. And that's, like, the reality is, I don't know if he's a receiver or if he's a tight end. What I view Prothrow as is a matchup problem. He's a guy that, yes, can play at receiver. He's a guy that I think could function as an H-back kind of mover tight end. I don't really think I ever see him as a inline guy like a la Darnell Washington from years past, or in the same vein as like an Oscar Delp right now. I don't think his body will ever get up to like the 250-ish range or 255-ish range. Like with his weight at 6'6", you're probably going to get closer to like 260, 265 to be able to play more of that inline role. And I don't think that's in the cards for him, but I do think he can get his weight up to like 225-ish and function as an H-back and create some matchups there. But that's what I love about this guy. Like, it's kind of like you think about basketball these days, and you hear all this talk about positionless basketball, how everybody on the team can knock down threes, can step out, has a jumper, can handle the ball, can put it on the floor and get to the rim, and there's no, like, defined positions anymore. At least that's the way basketball has been trending in recent years. And I see Prothrow kind of as an extension of that on the football field. He's a positionless player. And I know sometimes that might come with a negative connotation. Like in the past, I'm like, well, where does he play? Like, he's a tweener. And a tweener is always like a negative connotation. And you can look at Prothrow that way as a tweener between a receiver and a tight end, but I don't think that's how I approach it. If you utilize the guy correctly, which is, that's what you have to make sure you maximize his skill set. This is a guy that creates matchup problems all over the field. It could be a nightmare for a defensive coordinator. He's a mid 4'5" guy in a 6'6", 215, 220 frame, so he's moving at that size. And he's also a really fluid athlete. Sometimes you get these like taller guys that long striders, and once they get going, you know, like they can move a little bit, right? But in and out of break, short area, they're not as fluid. That's not the case for Prothrow. He moves really well. He's fluid in space. And one thing I do love about his game as well, like he has really good speed for a guy his size, like your mid 4'5" range. But he gets up to full speed quickly. A lot of times with guys his size and are those longer striders, like they can get going. And once they get going, it's like, man, like he's moving. But it takes him a minute to get up to full speed. It's not really the case with Prothrow. And I'm not saying he gets from 0 to 100 as quickly as a guy like Zachariah Branch might in the slot, like one of those shiftier, smaller slot receivers. But he gets up to full speed faster than I think the average guy at his size really does. I also am impressed by his route running ability, his ability to get in and out of breaks. That kind of goes along with the fluidity. There's a number of clips, if you look at his junior tape, where they're playing 8 to 10 yards off of a little bail technique there because they don't want to get beat over the top, because obviously the guy's 6'6" and can beat you over the top and run past you. But when they're giving that cushion, you can see him break off the routes and plant his foot and break out that route very quickly, very effortlessly. So I do think he has the ability to also create some separation for himself with his route running. That's why I think the fluidity is really important in his game. And of course, at 6'6", he has very impressive contested catch skills. Like, if you put the ball up in the air, he's going to go high point. He's going to win the vast majority of those battles. And that's what makes him a matchup problem on the outside, right? Like, is he going to be faster than every corner he plays against? No, but he'll be plenty fast enough to give them issues. But the average corner that's going to be defending him out wide is going to be what, like a little over, a shade over 6 foot. This guy's 6'6", and the physicality at the line of scrimmage. So if you want to press him, you know, play some press man, good luck with that. With a guy that's 6'6", 220, 225 out there, you're not going to win that battle. He's going to be able to get off any press coverage you have out there. So you're going to have to play off of him, which opens up more routes for him and for us to be able to run as an offense. And then if you are like in his hip pocket, again, you throw the ball up to him, he's going to go up and win the vast majority of those battles with his strong hands. So he's a matchup problem out there. If you move him inside to that H-back role, maybe in the slot, you get a matchup in the pass game with potentially linebackers, safeties. He's just going to be more athletic than most of those guys, especially the linebackers out in space, so he creates a matchup problem there. So he's going to create matchup problems all over the field. I think sometimes too much is made. Like, is he a receiver? Is he a tight end? We'll see. Like, again, he's the kind of guy that, with the talent he possesses and the unicorn nature of his skill set, you get him on your roster and you figure the rest out later. So I'm thrilled this guy. He's 100% a matchup problem. I think he's going to do big things for Georgia once he gets here in Athens. All right, so that was the headliner on Saturday, but it wasn't the only commitment that Georgia landed on Saturday, July 12th, as DB Tyreek Green from Buford High School also went public with his commitment. And I know this one kind of went a little more under the radar because he's not a 5-star guy like Kaden Prothrow is, and he's not a guy that's been, I think, as maybe highly touted as Prothro has, been a 5-star guy for a while now. But Green, don't make any mistake about it, guys. This dude can straight up play. 5'11", 190 pounds, and it's not like he's a scrub recruit in his own right. He's ranked as a 4-star, number 165 nationally, according to the On3 industry rankings. And he plays at Buford High School. Like, whatever you think about Buford, can we all agree that they got some good coaches there, right? Of course, they got great talent, so there's some recruiting going on. Obviously, we know all that, like, whatever. But the guy has top-level coaching at the high school level. He's been coached really well, and you can see that on tape. He plays both ways for Buford. He plays DB. He plays mainly safety on defense, but also plays running back for Buford. Like, if you're playing running back at Buford, like, they got a lot of talent there. That tells you what kind of athlete this guy is. But at the next level, he does project more as a DB. Again, he plays safety right now for Buford, primarily on defense. But when I watch him play, personally, I think I like him more long-term, projecting him down the line at Georgia as a star. I say that because he plays with a lot of physicality in this game. And he's listed at 5'11", 190. But when you look at the tape and you watch him play, he looks bigger than that. And if you read some of the interviews that some of his coaches have done since his commitment, they're saying the guy's like 200 and 205 pounds, every bit of that. And I believe it. That's like what you see on tape is kind of a guy who looks around 200, 205 pounds. So with the physicality and that size he brings, can he play safety? Of course. I have zero doubts about that. He's got the athleticism, he's got the speed, but I like him at star because those body types, those type of players are harder to find. Why is that? Because you are a hybrid player at the star position. So, like, you look at Kaden Prothrow, he's that kind of new age hybrid tight end receiver, right? Hybrid players are really tough to stop on either side of the football because they can fit multiple roles. Well, Tyreek Green is not the same player as Prothrow, plays a different position, but there's some similarities there, and I think he's a hybrid type athlete. With that physicality and the size he brings, I think he can really fit in well at the star position because at star, what do you have to do? Well, yeah, obviously you're going to have to cover in space some of those shiftier, faster slot receivers. Going to have to be able to do that and hold up effectively in space and coverage in that regard, which I think he can. And you also have run fit responsibilities in the box if you play that star position. There are many times, guys, you're taking on like legit offensive linemen with those run fits. So you've got to be physical. You've got to be a sure tackler. You've got to have enough size to be able to hold up. And I think he fits that bill. It's hard to find guys that are true stars. Like Janelle Aguero, I think is going to be in line for a big year this year because he is a true prototype for that star position, has the versatility to play in space, can cover. Is he an elite cover guy? No, but good enough, and can also with his size and physicality in his game, can really fit effectively against the run in the box. So I see a little bit of that in Tyreek Green, and that's the cool thing about him too. I projected more as a star, but again, I think he could play safety. That positional versatility makes you even more valuable for a college program. So I hear obviously me saying that he can play star and also safety. I've seen over the past couple of days on social media people throwing out the Javon Bullard comps. And I don't hate that. I don't hate it. I obviously see the similarities, a guy that has that positional versatility. But if I'm comparing those two coming out of high school and not looking at where Javon was coming out of Georgia, because Javon did run a 4.47 at the NFL Combine, which, to be honest, guys, I was a little surprised by that. I thought he would be like a low 4.5 guy. Didn't think he was slow. I didn't see a 4.47 coming out, but he put that up. Now, coming out of high school, Javon wasn't quite that. Like, he got faster during his time at Georgia with the strength and training program, obviously all of that. But right now, I do think Tyreek Green, like projecting him coming out of high school, I think he's maybe a little bit faster than Javon was coming out when he came out back in what, 2000 class? Or, sorry, 2020 class, 2021 class, one of those two classes. But if you look at Tyreek's measurables, if you look at some of his times out there, his verified times, he ran a 10.85 100 meter as a sophomore in high school. There's no telling where he is right now in the 100. I mean, he could be like a 10.6, 10, potentially 10.5 guy his senior year in high school if he's going to run the 100 meter. And he also was a member of the 4x1 6A state championship at Buford. So this guy can move. He returns kicks for Buford sometimes. He plays running back for them. So he has that athleticism. He has the speed to play in the back end at safety if you need him. But I also like the physicality and the versatility he brings to play star as well. So he's a fit, man. The other thing about Tyreek Green, last thing here that I'll throw out with him, is like, yeah, he's talented. He's athletic. He's fast. He's physical. But he is 100% a prototype for the Kirby Smart Georgia defense. Like, he is a Kirby Smart DB. And I say that because he's got the talent, right? But he's got that grittiness, that physicality, plays hard, he's well coached, he's technically sound, all those things. And he's going to come and he's going to be a great fit for Georgia. So if you find a guy that's talented and that is a fit for your team and your scheme and what you're looking for in those positions, it's no brainer. It's a take, and it's a huge get for Georgia, even if he's not a 5-star. So on the micro, that's what Georgia is getting in both Kaden Prothrow and Tyreek Green. But now let's move on to the macro, the big picture look here. So the commitments of Prothrow and Green, as I laid out at the beginning of the episode, have catapulted Georgia into that number one position currently in the 2026 recruiting class. Now, I broached this idea back in, I think it was like late May, early June, about a month and a half or so ago. And that was when Georgia was kind of just getting the ball rolling in the early stages of the summer with this recruiting class and starting to make a move, moving up the recruiting rankings. At the time, I was like, all right, look, guys, I think there's a shot. It might be an outside shot right now, but with some of the big targets we have out there, some of these guys that we're landing right now, after obviously in the aftermath of Jared Curtis, you land like a guy like Ryan Mosley, you get lucky in the fold, you get some guys like that, you get Justice Fitzpatrick, and it's like, oh, okay, like Georgia might have a shot here. Again, an outside shot at the time, about a month and a half ago, but I felt like we had at least put ourselves in the conversation. Now, my hold up at the time, the reason I wasn't willing at the time to go all the way out on that limb and say, all right, guys, yeah, Georgia's got the number one class in the bag. Like, we're going to be number one. Like, it is what it is. I wasn't sure that we would take enough players in this class to overtake USC. Because at the time, USC like 29 or 30 recruits. And in the early parts of the summer, we had like 19, 20, right? And then when I was looking at it, I was thinking like, okay, we might be like 24, 25, 26, somewhere in that range with recruits in this class, guys that were willing to take in this class. But there was some uncertainty there because like with the new House settlement and obviously how that's kind of changing the scholarship requirements and opening things up and it's doing away with the walk-ons, there was some uncertainty there. So I wasn't exactly sure how many we would take. So that's a big part of why I wasn't willing to go all the way out on the limb. All right, guys, we're going to be the number one class at some point here in this cycle. That's what we're going to end up with. But I was wrong. I'm man enough to own it. I'll own it right here. I was wrong, guys. We're sitting right now with these two most recent commitments at 29 commitments in this class. And we got a number of big targets left out there. So when you're looking at recruiting rankings, it's a matter of it's a combination of like quality of the player and also quantity. Like you have to take enough guys. They both kind of factor in there. I just didn't think that the quantity that we would take in this class would be high enough. I like the quality, but now it looks like they're both going to be in that range, obviously with us moving into that number 1 position right now. Now, I will tell you, a little inside baseball here. In the interest of full disclosure, this is not my first time recording this episode. This is actually the second time I've recorded this very episode because when I recorded it initially last night with the intentions of posting it around 2 or 3 o'clock today, at that time, Georgia was still in second place in the 2026 recruiting rankings on On3, right behind USC. Now, very close. We were 7/1000ths of a point away from being in that number 1 spot in this class at the time. So back when I recorded it last night, this episode was more about what does Georgia need to do to overtake USC. But today, things changed a little bit because On3 now / rivals, because the merger is official at this point, they're one and the same. Now they've merged, they have released their updated rankings, and with those updated rankings, Georgia has moved past USC without having to go out and add another player to this class. So instead of breaking down what Georgia needs to do to claim that number 1 class, which is what I did the first time I recorded this episode, we're going to break down what Georgia needs to do to keep that number 1 class, to stay in that top spot. Now, I want to make sure to emphasize, guys, it is July 14th, all right? It is mid-July. This thing won't be officially wrapped up until next February. Early signing period will be close enough in December, but there are months and months and months left in this class. Now, a lot of the big-time guys are more and more coming off the board in the summer months, so not as many big-time movers and shakers to go public and commit. When we get to December, when we get to the old school signing day back in February, when it used to be back in February, but there's a long way to go. And nothing happens in a vacuum. Like we're trying to add more players, but so are other programs out there. And there are a bunch of other programs that have done a really good job this class and are still very much in the conversation to potentially, with a strong finish, overtake us now and be the number 1 class, our number 1 class in the country in this 2026 cycle. But the Dogs are also, while other programs are going to make moves and nothing happens in a vacuum, we are also very far from done ourselves in this class because there are still a number of big-time targets out there that if we land them, at least some of them, could further entrench us in that pole position. So let's run through those guys here real quick. A couple of these guys at the top here, I know you're familiar with them, but let's run through them anyway. Obviously, at the top, you've got Tyler Atkinson, the number 1 inside linebacker in the country, top 10 prospect nationally. This is a guy that Georgia's been all over for years and years and years. He's a Georgia kid, Grayson High School. For a long time, I felt that Georgia was in the best position. I still feel that way. He has not officially announced an official date, but he last week, I believe it was early last week, he cut down his list to his final group and said it's going to be done soon. So before the summer's up, Tyler Atkinson is going to go public. That's going to happen sooner rather than later. And there's no guarantee in recruiting. There's no guarantee, especially with a guy like that. Bags to be dropped late, of course. But right now, I still do feel like Georgia has a better shot than anyone out there in the country to land Tyler Atkinson, that number 1 linebacker in the country. Which, by the way, if we did land Atkinson, long way to go. We'll see. But if we did, that would be the 3rd consecutive year that Georgia landed the number 1 inside linebacker in the country. That's crazy stuff, man. Glenn Schumann getting it done. So he's at the top of the list there. Then you have running back Derek Cooper, who, let's not forget, about a year-ish ago was actually committed to Georgia for 3 days. And then he decommitted, and obviously we've still been very much involved in his recruitment since then. It's kind of like Jared Curtis. Now, Curtis was committed for longer than Cooper was, but even though Jared Curtis decommitted, he still made it clear that Georgia was very much in the picture and was still very much an option. Derek Cooper's been, for a large part, the same way. And if you look at Cooper, he's like a fringe 5-star guy. Depending on what recruiting service you look at, he's ranked as the number 1 or 2 or 3 running back in the country. So one of the best running backs out there in all of America. He was actually slated to commit on Saturday as well, on July 12th. But about a week or two before that, he decided to back off on that and push his commitment back a little bit. But this is he's a guy that, like Atkinson, it seems like that he will go public here at some point before the summer is up. If you would have asked me a week or two ago, I would have told you, yeah, I feel really, really good about Cooper. And I still feel solid. I don't feel as good about him with him moving that date back because I did at the time feel like that we were going to be the pick on July 12th. So with him moving it back, that makes me think, okay, are other schools giving him something to think about here? You don't exactly know how to feel about it. So I don't really feel as good about Georgia landing Cooper as I do Atkinson, but we still have very much a good shot. I would say as good of a shot as anyone out there. Texas seems to be the team right now that's making a move late here. He's a Shamanda Madonna kid down in Florida, so Miami's obviously going to be a player there as well. But I feel like we got a legit shot here, and that's certainly a name that Georgia could add, a big name Georgia could add to his 2026 class. Then you've got two guys that are going public this week. On Wednesday, July 16th, linebacker Nick Abrams, who's a four-star, really talented kid. I really, really like this guy. I'm interested to see if because we've already got a couple linebackers in the fold right now. We flipped Shadarius Tootle a couple weeks ago from Auburn. Would we take both Atkinson and Abrams? I think probably if you can get both those guys, I think we would be willing to take them. Do they both want to come on the same, join the same team? I don't know. We'll see how that unfolds there. But I think Georgia has a really, really good shot with Nick Abrams on Wednesday, and then a defensive lineman that I love that is moving up the rankings. In fact, he's rated as a 4-star right now, guys. I don't know if there's many defensive tackles in the country that are better than him. I love James Johnson, and by the way, James Johnson, who I had as my number 2 most wanted prospect in this class when I put that list out about 2 months ago now. That guy in the new On3 Rivals rankings moved up to number 10 player in the entire country, which I told you at the time, this guy, I don't understand how he's not a 5-star. He's got to be a guy that's going to move up when they do the rankings updates, and lo and behold, yep, he absolutely did. But I think Valdon Sone is right there with James Johnson. I think he's a really, really talented guy. Could be a 5-star guy down the road at some point. I think he's certainly a top 100 guy in my opinion. And he's going to be going public later this week. I think Georgia's sitting in a really good spot for him as well. And then you have two other guys. Brett Colajay is an offensive tackle that was originally from Colorado, is now at IMG. Georgia's been recruiting him very heavily. Now he's at IMG. So Miami, Florida, they've been getting heavily involved there. I'm kind of 50-50 or so with Colajay. I think he's visited Georgia a number of times. I think we have a good shot with him. I just don't know if we should be the favorite right now, but we're certainly in the picture there in that conversation. And the last guy here, not as highly rated as the other guys that I just ran through, but Anthony Lonan is a guy that Georgia definitely wants in this class, and he is from Clark Central, about 2 miles down the road from me here in Athens. And this is a guy I've seen him play multiple times in person. The kid can play, and he's gotten bigger and better as his high school career has gone on. He's a 5-tech defensive. He's only rated as a 3-star, but he's a guy that is absolutely a fit for what we want to do defensively. Can set the edge with some physicality. Can also give you some pass rush off the edge situationally. So I love him, and it looks like that's a Georgia Tech battle right now. So those are 6 names right there that are big-time targets that Georgia is still very, very, very much in the picture for. Now, what do we need to do to hold on to that number 1 class? How many of these guys do we need to land? Well, if I'm looking at those 6 names that I just laid out there for you, if we land the top 2 that I laid out, Atkinson and Cooper, if we land just those 2, those are the only other 2 we add for the rest of the class, I think it might be hard for anyone to overtake us. With where we sit now, you add those 2 studs, the number 1 linebacker in the country, potentially number 1 running back in the country when it's all said and done. There's an argument to be made that he could potentially be in that spot, depending on what recruiting service that you look at. That would put us in a really good spot to hold on to that number 1 ranking through the rest of the 2026 cycle. Now, if we land one of those 2 guys, let's say Atkinson and one of the other 4-stars I mentioned, so maybe Atkinson and Abrams, or Atkinson and Sone, or Atkinson and Colajay, some combination of that, that would extend our lead. We obviously still be in the number 1 class, but I do think that would leave some room. If that's all we landed, that would leave some room for one of those other programs to come in later and potentially overtake us later in the cycle. Because again, nothing happens in a vacuum. There are some other programs out there. Alabama's been really hot lately as well. They still only have 19 commits on their commit list, and they're obviously going to keep adding more and more there. USC still in the picture there. A&M's got a good class going on, Notre Dame. So there's some other programs that have put themselves in position to have a shot to claim that number 1 class at the end if we don't further extend our lead. I think getting Atkinson and one of those other 4-stars, or Cooper and one of those other 4-stars, would give us a nice lead, but I think that would still leave the door open for another program to come in there and kind of overtake us for that spot. But if we land at least three of those 6 names I just laid out, and I think there's a really strong chance that we can do that, guys, especially if 2 of those 3 are Atkinson and Cooper, it will probably be game over in this class, at least in terms of the battle for that number 1 class in the country in the 2026 class. And look, while I hate, you know me, guys, if you've been with me for a while, you know this, I hate throwing out recruiting predictions because recruiting is about as fickle of a beast as there is out there on planet Earth, and things might be true 1 second, they change 2 seconds later, right? Especially now in the age of NIL and bags and all that stuff being dropped, and now programs are paying players. It's a different world in recruiting. It's always hard to predict recruiting, but now it's virtually impossible. So yes, I hate throwing out recruiting predictions. But I know you guys like that. I know you want that. So as a man of the people here, I'm going to try to give you guys what you want. So if I had to throw out a prediction right now, like how does Georgia finish down the line here? I do believe that Georgia is going to end up landing at least 3 of those 6 names I laid out between Atkinson, Cooper, Abrams, Sone, Colajay, and Lonan. If we land at least 3 of those 6, which I believe that we're going to do, I'll project that right now, I believe that will further entrench us in the #1 spot to the point that no other program will be able to overtake us in this class. And the Dogs will ultimately finish with the #1 class in the country. But all right, guys, there you go. #1 class in the country, at least for the time being. Let's add a few more so that no one can even come close to touching that. And I think that's exactly what we'll do. So thank you guys for being here. I greatly appreciate it. If you enjoyed this content and you're a diehard Georgia fan, please go ahead, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel right now. Turn those notifications on. Got a ton of content coming your way, and you don't want to miss it. If you like this video, please like the video. And also, let me know what you guys think. Do you think Georgia will finish with the #1 class? What do you think the Dogs' chances are with some of these big-time targets left out there in the 2026 cycle? But thank you guys again for being here. I greatly, greatly appreciate you. I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs!
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top.